2, 1. The Voice of Stockton. For more information on The Voice of Stockton, go to thevoiceofstockton.org.
The views and opinions expressed in the following program do not necessarily reflect those of KXVS The Voice of Stockton or its parents, affiliates, management, and staff.
Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another amazing episode of the Phone Booth here on KXVS, the voice of San Joaquin. My name is Edward Heitman, and joining me as always is my good friend and co-host, Brian Rodriguez.
Hello.
How you doing today, man?
Pretty good, pretty good.
Good to hear. Now, for those of you who might be unfamiliar with what the Phone Booth is all about, our show is dedicated to the world of pop culture. Anything from movies to video games to TV shows to comic books, you name it, and we do our very best to cover it. Now, before we enter today's show, I kind of wanted to give a little bit of a request to you, the audience. You see, what we want to do is always talk about the things that interest the audience, you folks out there, anything regarding pop culture. Now, we want to emphasize, if you ever have a request for a topic that you would like for us to talk about, please let us know. You know, we're always waiting for your feedback. We want to hear from you folks. So if there's anything that you want us to talk about for a discussion piece, or at least to reference it in our weekly recap, just let us know. Message us on our Facebook page, or let us know personally if you're friends with us on Facebook and whatnot.
Yeah, or even like comment on a video. I read those, so you know, if you put a suggestion in the comment, we'll try to get to it.
Yeah, even, you know, just messaging us, you know. We are keeping an eye on our Facebook comments live right now, so we'll listen to your feedback. Now, first off, we have to enter our weekly recap. And in this segment, Brian and I will talk about some of the things that have happened in the world of pop culture within this week. Now, I'll get started. Some sad news, unfortunately, this week. Oreo the raccoon, the visual inspiration for Rocket Raccoon in Guardians of the Galaxy, has passed away. Now, we don't normally cover animals in the world of pop culture passing away because, in all fairness, there aren't really many animals that are inspirations in the world of pop culture. At least none that we know of. But we had to talk about Oreo because it was an inspiration for a very popular, very well-liked character in Guardians of the Galaxy. All we can say is it's unfortunate that Oreo had passed away. He lived a pretty long lifespan, didn't he?
Yeah, he lived to be 10, which is pretty good for raccoons. And over the wild, they typically live to 2 to 3 years, but in captivity, they can live up to 20. So 10's pretty good.
Yeah, 10 is a pretty good number. So, you know, I'm afraid there's not much else we can really say about it. There's not really much to go into detail about.
It's the animals die. It's it's a fact of life. It's the way the world works. And some animals get to be more significant than others.
Yeah, that's true. Anyways, Brian, you go ahead and take on the next little news topic.
Okay. So Vic Mignogna, the voice actor famous for his role as Edward Elric in the Full Metal Alchemist series and recently as Broly in Dragon Ball Super Broly, has been fired by Rooster Teeth Productions. He played the role of Crow in their animated series Ruby, and the firing comes after numerous allegations of unacceptable behavior and conduct towards fans and co-workers. He has also had numerous conventions that he was to attend in 2019 cancel on him. And we are not going to get into the details of this, A, because they're allegations and they're serious ones, and B, because we try to make the show an area free of
opinion.
Not even opinion, but I'd say controversy.
Yeah.
So much.
Yeah.
The world is a complicated and sometimes scary place nowadays, so we want our show to sort of be an hour or so that you can take away from that complication and that fear, I think.
Yeah, there's a very good point. We here at the Phone Booth, we try our best to avoid controversial topics. and there's been an awful lot since our show has began. We don't want to be people to have a topic and go full in depth on what we think about it. We just want to report. That's what the show's about. Let people know that the news is out there, and if we're not really comfortable talking about it, we want to at least let you know so that you yourself would be able to go out there and do the research and everything and form your own opinion, because we want you to be able to form your own opinion on things. We don't want you to just listen to what we have to say about it,
And
So-
it's hard to find that line between reporting the news and reporting on essentially gossip at a certain point. And I think that in the past there may have been a few things we should have talked about but didn't, and I think we're getting better about that.
Yeah.
And I think, and again, you can tell us how you want to hear this news. We're always going to report the news, but tell us if there are things you want us to talk about.
Yeah, let us know if there's something that you want to talk about. And while we ourselves might not give our full opinions on subjects, we're also willing to hear your opinions on subjects. If you want to comment on the video, letting us know what you think about it all, that's fine with us.
Yeah.
It's just we're trying our best to stick to just reporting the info. And when it comes to things that are just rumors and allegations, we have to be very careful because we ourselves want to make sure that it's concrete, it's factual. And when it comes to allegations, it's kind of a 50-50 thing. So we're kind of waiting until it's been confirmed,
Yeah.
Yeah. But enough of that. It's a shaky subject, so let's just move along to the next little topic. It appears the sequel to World War Z is finally dead. And honestly, I'm surprised that it was still alive to begin with. After being in pre-production for about 6 years, according to Deadline, budget concerns ultimately killed the project. The film was set to be directed by David Fincher and have Brad Pitt return to star in the film. Now, I never read the book, so I didn't know there could be some form of continuation after World War Z. And in all fairness, World War Z kind of it ended on a decent note. I mean, I didn't really see it kind of have the possibility to branch into a sequel in the first place.
Okay, so to get this off the table, World War Z the movie is basically nothing like World War Z the book.
Oh, okay.
The main character has the same name but serves a very different role. The writer of the book, Max Brooks, has actually said that the only commonality between the two is the title. There are a few events in the movie that happen in the books, but they happen so offhand and suddenly without any sort of consequence that it's barely there.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, the idea of a World War Z sequel is interesting. I mean, in all fairness, I really did enjoy that movie's interpretation of zombies, especially the fact that at one part, I'm not really spoiling anything, but there's a part where there's a bunch of zombies at a wall and they just start piling up on each other to get over the border. And that's honestly the first time I ever actually seen anybody go that route with zombies. People always think, if they're at the wall, they're going to stop because they're just going to mumble around and just kind of wander around. But these zombies piled up and got over, and it was fun to watch. Definitely some interesting interpretations of zombies.
Now, according to Deadline, they're not 100% sure if the sequel is dead or if it's been sent back to the drawing table, so you could almost say it's in a state of undead.
That's a good pun. I like that.
It's not a good pun, but I still like it.
All right, man, you go ahead and take away the next little topic.
Okay, I'm going to butcher this, but Danai Gurira, the actress who plays Michonne on The Walking Dead, will be leaving the show after the 9th season. She's currently scheduled to appear in the first few episodes of Season 10 before leaving the show and joining the trilogy of Walking Dead films starring Andrew Lincoln. Andrew Lincoln actually left early on in Season 9 to, star in this trilogy of films, and now it appears Michonne will be joining him whenever they get released.
Now, I mean, I'm afraid I don't really have too much to say about that topic because I'm the small minority of people who have not really watched the Walking Dead show. I was kind of like a day late and $1 short by the time I was interested in watching the show. There are already 3 seasons, and By the time I wanted to try getting into the first season, the fourth season had already dropped, and then there were so many episodes ahead that I was kind of behind. It's kind of my issue with a lot of shows. I'm always really late to the party when I want to watch a TV show. It happened to me with Breaking Bad. That's my issue with the CW Arrowverse. It's also my issue with the Netflix Marvel Universe. But I just find it interesting that the show is still going. I believe it's on its final season at the moment.
Oh, it's showing. No, it's currently in season 9. It's getting in 10th season, and they've said that they can envision 10 more years of the show. It's not stopping anytime soon.
Because I know they are doing a spin-off series, Fear the Walking Dead. That's kind of like taking place like around the very beginning of the outbreak or something like that. It
started at the beginning of the outbreak, but it's had more crossovers with the main show now. I'm not exactly sure on what's happening in the show. There are so many time jumps in The Walking Dead. It's hard to keep track of what's happening when.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then there's the whole thing about the movies, too. I kind of feel like The Walking Dead is trying too hard to franchise itself. They're trying. It's like they got the idea from Marvel where it's like, we're doing well, so let's try our best to network this as much as humanly possible with as many seasons and shows and spin-offs and movies as possible. And while Marvel was able to successfully do that, they were also running on a very high budget, and Disney eventually started pitching in and helping out as well. So there was also that whole aspect to assist them. While AMC, they're kind of just floating around on their own, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean there are other people working on The Walking Dead. There are the video games. There's Robert Kirkman, who I believe is still writing the comic books.
Oh,
that you remember that all this is based off of.
I forget that sometimes. I'm surprised it's still going.
Yeah, it's apparently got a vastly different plot because essentially towards like the second or third season, the show just went off on its own.
Oh man, well that is unfortunate. But yeah, expect more Walking Dead in the future. That's
forever
and ever and ever.
Never.
They're trying to take the Simpsons route and just never die. Anyways, on to the next little topic. Now, after months of speculation and behind-the-scenes drama, it appears Guardians of the Galaxy 3 finally has a script. According to Chris Pratt, Star-Lord, the film will be using ex-director James Gunn's script when it finally goes into production. Gunn was fired from the film last summer after insensitive tweets he had made in the past had resurfaced around San Diego Comic-Con.
Yeah.
Now, this has been a very, very thin ice kind of subject. They've been trying to find directors to get this movie into production for a while. There were rumors that the movie itself is going to be put on hold. They were trying to get Taika Waititi to do Guardians of the Galaxy, but then even he recently had stated that James Gunn should be the director for this movie. Mm-hmm. So, and a lot of people they're afraid to touch this movie just because of the fact that it's kind of one of James Gunn's babies. Before he worked on the movies, nobody knew about Guardians of the Galaxy unless you were a hardcore Marvel fan, and not many people really envisioned them being in a movie. But James Gunn managed to pull it off, and it's unfortunate that he stepped away, but I'm at least glad that his script is going to be used, because he was pretty good at writing these movies,
Yeah, and I remember Dave Bautista, who plays Drax in the movies, actually said that if they didn't use Gunn's script for the third movie, he wouldn't be in it.
Yeah, that probably contributed to it, because I remember there was a lot of outrage after the director had left. The entire cast had written out a letter, saying that they supported Gunn and everything, but that's all in the past. Gunn's just not coming back, and we're fine with that. He's now working on the Suicide Squad sequel coming out, which is just titled The Suicide Squad for whatever reason.
So dumb.
It is pretty dumb, but, I mean, at least the script is still being used. Because he was good. He was a good writer, at least. I liked his style of comedy and his dialogue scenes and stuff, and as long as the script's being used, I can deal with another director handling the project,
Yeah.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, anyways, go ahead and take away the next subject, man.
So, a spin-off to Aquaman is already in the works, along with a sequel to Aquaman. The spinoff will focus on the Trench, the monstrous race of undersea dwellers that were featured in the movie and in the comics earlier. And it will supposedly, according to The Hollywood Reporter, be a horror film that will not have any of the stars of Aquaman in it, and will have a much tighter budget than previous DC films, which is a little concerning, because they're focusing on the non-human undersea characters, which means there'll probably be a lot of costuming, a lot of makeup, a lot of CGI, which would lend itself better to having a decently sized, and we don't exactly know what tighter means. It could mean, instead of 200 million, they get 150 million to make it. But it's unclear, and I think the fact that the tighter budget is there shows that DC may not have either not have a ton of faith in the project, or be trying to reduce spending on movies, given that a lot of them, have gotten critically mauled, and even in the case of Justice League, financially mauled, being the lowest grossing movie of the DCEU.
Now, with this spin-off, I kind of have some hope for it. I mean, after all, the Aquaman movie supposedly did really well in the box office when it got released, and a lot of people really enjoyed it. So props to James Wan for being able to pull that off, because a lot of people had their doubts about Aquaman being able to do a standalone film, at least without the Justice League being involved, but it worked. I also have faith in this because of the fact that I believe this is the first horror movie that's in the DC universe. All the DC movies have been action, and The Dark Knight was only like a little bit of horror in regards to Scarecrow and Batman Begins, but that's not even in the new cinematic universe.
Yeah, they tried to make a horror movie with Justice League Dark, directed by Guillermo del Toro, but eventually that got delayed, and eventually it got turned into an animated movie without Del Toro attached.
Yeah, so this is a first, and that's also going to be able to grab viewers' attention, because people are going to want to check out the first DC live-action horror film, if it is live-action, and I really hope it is live-action. And as far as the budget goes, it's not uncommon for a horror movie to be able to do really, really well with a low budget, especially if it's DC. I have a feeling they're probably going to try and take the Blumhouse effect. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the Blumhouse effect, Blumhouse has been responsible for a lot of movies to drop within the last couple of years. We've gotten Upgrade, we've gotten Happy Death Day, I believe Truth or Dare, the Halloween reboot, and all sorts of things. And the whole process is that he'll just toss money, a fair amounts of money at every single project that comes out, and it's kind of like a hit or miss kind of thing. And with horror movies, they can get away with a shorter budget because there are less elements that need to go into play. I mean, for example, nowadays in horror movies, they focus heavily on jump scares. So there'd probably be a lot more of those being involved. Probably less scenes in the movie, because horror movies tend to really lack a large amount of location. All in all, I mean, it could work. But at the same time, they're not using a main DC character. Instead, they're using background characters, essentially. So it's a real 50-50 situation, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, on to the next little topic. For the past few years, developer Beamdog has been remastering various Dungeons & Dragons RPGs, including games made by BioWare and Black Isle Studios. And now, thanks to a partnership with Skybound, those remasters will be coming to console. Baldur's Gate, Baldur's Gate 2, Baldur's Gate Siege of Dragonspear, Icewind Dale, Neverwinter Nights, and Planescape Torment will all be coming to the PS4, Xbox One, and Switch sometime in 2019. Now, I'm excited for that, mainly because we just need more RPGs in consoles nowadays. If you know me, you know that I'm getting a little tired of the whole battle royale genre. It's just kind of taken the whole games industry by storm. And I kind of just been wanting something new to try out. And the fact that some classic RPGs are being put into play, that's awesome. Especially the Baldur's Gate franchise. The Baldur's Gate series never really disappoints people. I remember playing Dark Alliance on the PlayStation 2, and I loved it. So I think it's pretty cool that these games are coming back,
Yeah, and if they come out towards the end of the year, it actually makes my holiday shopping easier, because my father is actually a fan of the Neverwinter Nights and Baldur's Gate series, but he doesn't have a lot of time to game, so he usually just does things on the Switch on his, train to and from work. So, having these as a gift opportunity for him would be great.
Yeah, So, I mean, it's pretty exciting. I'm really looking forward to it. I can't wait. So, be sure to check that out. Now, on to you, Brian, for the next little topic.
So, during an interview, Disney CEO Bob Iger addressed the possibility of more R-rated Deadpool films, which has been something of a question given the Disney-Fox merger. Regarding R-rated Deadpool films and R-rated Marvel films, Iger's exact quote is as follows, quote, "We are going to continue in that business, and there might be room for more of that," end quote. Now, a lot of people are interpreting this as confirmation that there will be more R-rated Deadpool films, but if you look at the quote, "We are going to continue in that business, and there might be more room for that," implies that they are open to R-rated films, at least, but he doesn't necessarily, commit to an R-rated Deadpool film. Because, especially given the fact that Once Upon a Deadpool, PG-13 of Deadpool 2 recently came out and apparently did well, and was apparently both a way to get the film past China's notoriously restrictive censors and sort of a proving ground that Deadpool could work as PG-13 for Disney. It's possible they'll go to R-rated Deadpool films. Possible they will hold back. And Iger did go on to say that Disney would be careful moving forward and possibly have R-rated Marvel movies under a different brand or banner to sort of separate them from the more family-friendly Disney, image.
I can see that happening because of the fact that for a minute, Marvel had its own production company, Marvel Knights. Mm-hmm. And Marvel Knights is where we got in Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance. I believe that's where we got the second Punisher movie, War Games or something like that.
I think if it was War Games or Warzone, it only
Warzone, Warzone with Jigsaw in it.
Yeah, it only had the two films under that banner. It was the second Ghost Rider and the third Punisher, because there was one back. I don't know how you count the Punisher.
Second. The one with Dolph Lundgren doesn't count. There was the one with Dolph Lundgren, and then there was the Punisher, and then there was Punisher Warzone.
It's an entire thing.
It is an entire thing. But the point of the matter is that there was a production company in Marvel for the superhero films that were a lot grittier, a lot darker. Because, Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance, you had a character that could basically rot flesh with a single touch. In Punisher Warzone, you actually saw the Punisher blow someone's head off with a shotgun. Gore and everything. So there is a production company for it. And Deadpool would definitely be perfect for Marvel Knights. Mm-hmm. And the fact that they said that there might be more room for more of it, I can see that happening. After all, an example. I know that it's been kind of canceled already, but the Gambit movie. Now, that one was considered to be directed more as a rom-com. I believe it was Channing Tatum that wanted to take on that role.
Yeah, he was going to play and possibly direct at one point.
Yeah, and a movie like that, I can see that movie getting away with a rated R, rating as well. Given the new Disney-Fox merger deal, I can see some X-Men movies possibly going rated R. I definitely like to see more movies like Logan. That would be epic. Mm-hmm. But it's a strong possibility. And I have to give credit to Deadpool because it was able to prove the MCU wrong that, we should have some rated R Marvel movies. People will love it. People will watch it. It won't tarnish your reputation because everybody knows that Deadpool is a rated R character. You can't really damage your reputation with that, So, it's a possibility, and I am looking forward to it. Now, on to the next little topic. Speaking of Bob Iger, apparently he is fine with the way that EA has been handling the Star Wars property. During an earnings call on Tuesday, Iger lamented that Disney had never been particularly successful developing and publishing their own games, before going on to say that Disney had a good relationship with EA, and that they will be remaining in this relationship. This comes after multiple fan movements to have Disney revoke EA's exclusive access to the Star Wars license. Now, I find it odd. I find it very odd that Disney is fine with the way EA is handling the license, because EA has done a very terrible job with handling Star Wars games.
Yep, in the 4 years they've had the license, 2 games have been released. 2.
And both of them had major controversies behind them.
Mm-hmm.
They were not successful. Loot boxes galore. Don't even get me started on the Pink Vader situation. They have not done good. Lots of fans have been angry about it. So I find it peculiar that Bob Iger is fine with it being the way it is, given that Disney in itself really cares if certain parts of their global empire, so to speak, starts crumbling.
They are very protective of Star Wars right now, mainly because, you know, it has the potential for every movie to gross about $1 billion. I know Last Jedi and Force Awakens did. I believe Rogue One did. I know Solo didn't, which was a huge blow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Disney's very protective of Star Wars, so I find it odd that they're fine with EA not doing good with Star Wars at all. Because, I mean, honestly, the best they could do is just kind of feature characters from Disney Star Wars films as DLC. And sometimes you really have to grind in order to get that character in the first place, you know.
And it's possible that the reason EA isn't handling it well is because current CEO Andrew Wilson doesn't want Star Wars. The deal was made before he became CEO, and he has been fairly notorious for trying to focus on EA's original properties, you know, FIFA, Anthem coming up, things like that. And behind closed doors, he hasn't been exactly fond of being saddled with the Star Wars license.
Yeah, it makes the whole situation even more confusing. I can't really make much sense out of it. But
It's a mess, and it's really based upon as much controversy as they get, these games make money. And some of that money goes to Disney. So Disney's ultimately happy because people will still go to see their movies.
Yeah, fair enough. Anyways, Brian, you go ahead and take away the next topic.
So yet again, speaking of EA, they had their quarterly earnings call this week. And between the financial statistics and the stockholder placating and the being disappointed in games they themselves sabotaged from the beginning, we got some interesting information. Now, this week, the last episode, we talked about how Respawn might be releasing a Battle Royale game the following Monday. And they did, Apex Legends, and it's pretty good. And during the press junket for Apex Legends, Respawn confirmed that they are not developing Titanfall 3. Titanfall 3 is not in development, and everyone was sad. However, during the earnings call, it was confirmed that another Titanfall game will be coming out this year, and that will put a new twist on the Titanfall universe. Here's hoping it has the actual Titans in it.
Yeah, because, the whole thing with Apex Legends was that it's based in the Titanfall universe.
Barely,
and yet you don't have the Titans. And that was the most confusing part of it all. If you're going to have a Battle Royale game that's at least kind of based in the Titanfall universe, why would you not have the Titans? That's why people enjoyed playing Titanfall in the first place. And I don't like Battle Royale, but I would play a Battle Royale if I can run around in a giant mech suit when I want to.
Yeah,
that was a whole missed opportunity.
Let me list out the ways Apex Legends is actually connected to Titanfall. In the store description, it references the game taking place in the Frontier, which is the setting for the Titanfall games, and it's the loose outer reaches of space. And that's it. No other references to Titanfall as far as I can find. Man. There is a drop pod sort of care package type thing that uses similar animation to the Titans coming in, and there is a grappling character that uses the similar grapple to the characters in Titanfall 2. But that's really it. And it feels like the only reason it's a Titanfall game is because they wanted the established IP to help carry it. But even then, they don't call it like Titanfall Legends. It's Apex Legends.
Yeah, it's odd. It's just odd. Anyways, next little topic. New titles in the Need for Speed and Plants vs. Zombies franchises are in the works. We don't know exact details, but the games are supposed to be out by April of 2020. Now, Need for Speed isn't much of a surprise to me. I mean, granted, their audience has been getting more and more of a niche market because Need for Speed, while they still make new installments, are getting less and less played, especially with the Forza franchise being so popular nowadays.
Need for Speed has always sort of been niche. It's the sort of street racing. It's not, the grand vistas as you race along a track against 12 other players. It's the outrunning the cops and
I mean, occasionally they try and take the tournament circuit route with games like Shift and everything, but for the most part, it's always been underground street racing. I personally hope they go back to another Need for Speed Underground game, because that was my favorite part of the whole franchise, was Underground 1 and 2. And Carbon was also pretty good, but afterwards I kind of stopped paying attention. Now, Plants vs. Zombies. Now, that is one that interests me because I kind of thought that the whole hype over Plants vs. Zombies was just kind of gone.
It kind of has, at least for the original series, but after they released Plants vs. Zombies 1 and 2, they released the Garden Warfare series, which is essentially, what if Plants vs. Zombies was COD? And it was stupid, but it was a fun kind of stupid. Like the second game, it was that, but then there was a mode in the end game where you played as a robot T-Rex trying to stop gnomes from destroying time. That was an actual game mode in Plants vs. Zombies, one with no plants or zombies in it. And it was hilarious, and it was fun. And there are some sources reporting that it's supposed to be a shooter game, like another Plants vs. Zombie shooter. I haven't found any statements that say that, but if it is, another, Garden Warfare game could be interesting. The franchise has been on ice for a little bit because Garden Warfare 2 didn't sell as well as EA wanted. Of course, what EA wants is the moon, and they get upset if we can't even break the atmosphere.
Yeah, that's true. Well, anyways, ladies and gentlemen, that about does it for this week's thing of the weekly recap. Now, if there are any other topics that you'd like us to talk about, within next week, be sure to message us, let us know, and we'll include it into our list of things to talk about. Now, without further ado, it's time for us to jump into our next little subject, which is trailer talk. And now, in this segment, Brian and I like to talk about some of the latest trailers to drop within the week and just kind of give our opinions on it. You ready?
Yep.
Okay. Now, our first trailer is the first trailer released so far for Shaft, the newer version of Shaft. Its U.S. release date is June 14th, 2019, starring Samuel L. Jackson, Jesse T. Usher, Richard Roundtree, and others. And the synopsis is that John Shaft Jr., a cybersecurity expert with a degree from MIT, enlists his father's help to uncover the truth behind his best friend's untimely death, and it is directed by Tim Story. Now, I never got to watch the first Shaft, which is unfortunate because I have been dying to watch the first Shaft. But from this trailer, it looks amazing. Were you able to catch the trailer?
I was. It was a lot of fun. And seeing for those who don't know, Richard Roundtree played Shaft in the original 1970s movies. And then when they tried to reboot the franchise in 2000 with Samuel L. Jackson, he actually played what is hinted to be the original Shaft, and that Samuel L. Jackson Shaft is his nephew, essentially. So now you've got a sequel to that movie with Samuel L. Jackson having the third generation of Shaft. So you've got this sort of grandfather, father, son dynamic going on between three generations of Shaft.
And it looks fun. It just looks like such a fun movie to watch.
It does.
It reminds me of like the old school movies from the 70s and 80s, where a lot of them were real good popcorn movies. Like they weren't necessarily the most serious movies out there, but something that you just want to sit down with a thing of popcorn and just enjoy it all unfold.
Yeah, in fact, I see the original Shaft used a lot of times as an example of a popcorn movie.
Yeah, and one thing I think is awesome is that they even used the original theme song for Shaft in this one. So the nostalgia factor is great for anybody who is a fan of the original franchise. So we would definitely recommend that you give that trailer a watch. You would not be disappointed. It is just fun. Now, our next trailer is the first trailer for a movie called The Sun Is Also a Star. Its U.S. release date is May 17th, 2019, and is starring Yara Shahidi, Charles Melton, Faith Logan, and others. The synopsis that we were given is that a teenager finds love at a difficult time in her family's life, directed by Russo Young, but the overall plot to it is, it's your general feel-good rom-com, basically. Our main character is a girl who's going to be leaving New York, I want to say it was, because her family is leaving, and like on her last few days, she just so happens to bump into this guy. They chat, they start falling in love, and then they have to cope with the fact that she is leaving her town, her city. And it looks good for people who are interested in romantic movies. It is your typical feel-good movie. But aside from that, I can't really say anything else about it. It's just your typical feel-good romance movie.
Honestly, this trailer completely slipped me by this week. I didn't see it.
Yeah, I I gave it a glance, and it, like I said, if you're a fan of romances, this movie looks like it would be up your alley. I mean, I'm not a fan of them myself, but I can at least tell when other people would be interested in that movie in particular. So, I mean, if that's up your alley, be sure to give it a watch. It is again, it's the first trailer for The Sun Is Also a Star. It looks good. I'll give it that. Now, our last trailer is the second trailer for Ugly Dolls. Its U.S. release date is May 10th, 2019, starring Emma Roberts, Janelle Monáe, Nick Jonas, and others. And the synopsis is that it's an animated adventure in which the free-spirited Ugly Dolls confront what it means to be different, struggle with a desire to be loved, and ultimately discover who you truly are is what matters most. And it's directed by Kelly Asbury. Now, the main thing I can describe about this movie, it's kind of like a Toy Story movie, but with a bit of a twist. Now, the movie's premise is that there are a lot of toys that are made in factories, perfectly designed for kids to enjoy. And this movie kind of shows like what necessarily happens to the defective toys. The ones that aren't necessarily built the right way. They might be missing an eye, they might have an extra hunch in their back or something, and they kind of just get sent to this world that's for defective toys. And the small group of them manage to find a way into the Academy of Perfection, which I guess is where the toys that are perfect go, to kind of figure out who they are and what owners they should go to. And shenanigans kind of just happens. And it looks fun. It looks like a good kids movie. What were your thoughts, man?
I didn't manage to catch this one. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, overall, if you were a fan of the Toy Story franchise, then you'll probably be a fan of this movie as well. It doesn't look over the top. It doesn't look like they insert random humor in it because they just need to throw in a joke in the next 10 minutes. It just looks like a genuine good kids movie. So if you're looking for a movie for your kid to watch that you yourself might even enjoy, be sure to give it a watch. Again, it is the second trailer for Ugly Dolls.
Now, there were two trailers this week we didn't really watch. There was the second trailer for Pet Sematary and the first trailer for the Child's Play reboot. Not the television reboot, but the movie reboot, because there are two Child's Play reboots going on right now, because why not?
Yeah.
And I'm not a huge fan of horror movies. I scare very easily, so I didn't watch them.
Yeah, and when it comes to horror movies, if we are ever to recommend a horror movie to somebody, we would prefer it being a movie that's not over the top with gore or violence, because we don't know who we're directing to watch these trailers. We don't know if it's a grown adult. We don't know if it's a 12 or 13-year-old watching our show to watch the trailers. But we will let you know that those two trailers are available. We also we know that the Super Bowl came out recently, and along with that, there were a lot of TV and movie shorts, like teaser trailers that came out and whatnot. There was one for Avengers Endgame, there was one for Captain Marvel, there was one for a series called Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark.
Right, that's being made by Guillermo del Toro.
Yeah, and they definitely look interesting. The only reason why we skipped them was because they're shorts.
Yeah, they're 30 seconds at most, at least the Endgame and Captain Marvel ones were. I think the Captain Marvel one barely showed new footage, while Endgame did show some new footage, but they have announced that all the footage they're going to be showing in the trailers and TV spots is going to be from the first 20 minutes of this supposedly 3-hour film.
Yeah. So we kind of skipped it because there's not really much for us to talk about. I mean, they're all available on YouTube for you to watch. We tend to get our trailers from Movie Clips Trailers. They happen to have all the Super Bowl shorts that were available. Be sure to give that a watch. And
of course, things like Marvel Entertainment have the full trailers or clips on their channel, and usually they have them without any pop-ups or preamble.
Right. So that was it for trailer talk, ladies and gentlemen. Now we would like to hear your opinions on these trailers. What were your thoughts? Did you like any of them? Did you have your doubts on any of them? Be sure to let us know. And now, it is time for our final subject in this show, our discussion pieces. Now, I'm going to let Brian take these away because he's a bit more informed on it than I am. So go ahead and take it away, man.
Okay, so the first one we have is kind of funny. We've talked a bit about the sort of ongoing feud between the Epic Games Store and Steam, and how Steam has, been losing a lot of games to it, sometimes in the case of Metro Exodus, to the detriment of fans.
Yeah, we decided that we're just going to try and keep this like a weekly update, since there seems to be news on it every week.
Yeah, so currently the news is that Axiom Verge, the Metroidvania-style game from a few years ago, is currently free through the Epic Games Store as part of their promotion to get more people coming to it. However, the game was rendered unplayable by the time you reached the 3rd level because of a oversight on the developer's part. See, on the process of transferring the game over from Steam to Epic, he went through and removed all the files labeled Steam, because he felt, if we're going to sell it on the Epic Games Store, you shouldn't be able to find Steam files in there. However, he forgot to account for the fact that some of those files were Steam sound effects for the actual process of vaporized water shooting out of pipes in the game's 3rd level. He removed these sound files for actual Steam from the game, which ended up crashing the game every time you entered the zone. So the game has now been fixed. You can download a patch, or even if you download it now, it'll be fixed. But it was a funny story to come across, mainly because it shows how far some people are willing to go to try to, make something their own, that they'll trip over their own shoelaces to do it.
Yeah, wasn't this talked about in the Steam forums?
Yes,
Yeah.
it had to be. They had to troubleshoot this issue in the Steam forums because the Epic Games Store does not have a community or forum section. So people from the Epic Games Store had to go over to Steam to try to get help figure out why their game didn't work.
It's hilarious. This whole thing, the whole thing between Epic Games and Steam clashing is a very interesting thing to analyze because there's so many things going on about it. I mean, for example, there is the lack of the community and forums section in the Epic Games Store, and this kind of really dented the Metro franchise. Last week, we were talking about how Metro Exodus became an Epic Games exclusive. It is no longer available on Steam. And because of this, people decided to go into the review section of Metro 2044 and Metro Last Light and just review bomb both games. And they're all talking about how you should not play Exodus over on the Epic Games Store because of all these things the Epic Games Store doesn't have that Steam does have and everything. And it's like watching two 5th graders get into like a slap fight over something,
Yeah.
It's hilarious. I'm getting a good laugh out of it all.
So the next thing we want to talk about is the fact that Microsoft seems to be bringing Xbox Live to the Nintendo Switch. Now, in a GDC session listing, GDC being the Game Developers Conference that's coming up, it showed that Microsoft is planning to announce a new cross-platform development kit that would allow people on iOS, Switch, and Android to use the Xbox Live framework, including things such as achievements and friends lists, across, Xbox, Microsoft Windows, and the, aforementioned iOS, Switch, Android, which is really big, especially in a time when every developer or every, console has to have their own paid online service, and Nintendo actually currently has one. The idea that Xbox Live could be coming to Switch is pretty monumental.
Oh yeah, it's really big. I mean, a lot of game companies, they've kind of kept their online services exclusive. A huge victim of this, or should I say suspect in this case, would be Sony. If you guys might or may not be familiar with what happened a while back when Sony basically said that they wanted PSN to be exclusively for PlayStation, and they also basically said that they were not going to allow cross-play with any other console. This was a huge deal with Fortnite when Fortnite had dropped. There was the Switch and the Xbox were able to cross over no problem, but Sony would not allow people to sign in to their PSN on other consoles, preventing their Epic Games account from being able to sign in, preventing them from being able to play Fortnite rounds. So the fact that Microsoft is willing to let Xbox Live possibly transfer over to the Switch, it's a big deal. It really shows that other game companies aside from Sony are really evolving and realizing that, working together, a bit of teamwork is going to be beneficial for both sides of the party. And I kind of really hope that Sony eventually comes to grips with that and they finally understand that, because their main defense is that, hey, we don't need to cross-play with other people. We have a huge market because we're exclusive, and we should stay exclusive. And nowadays, it's just not going to work.
They've tried so many excuses in the past. They tried to say that it was too complicated to have cross-play between consoles, which was debunked by it accidentally happening in Fortnite, and the Epic Games saying that it accidentally happened because they accidentally flipped one wrong switch. And then Psyonix, the developers of Rocket League, said all it would take to enable crossplay between Xbox and PlayStation is clicking a button. So that sort of blew that out of the water. And then they tried to use the excuse that if they allowed crossplay, they couldn't control who's, using their service, and it might be detrimental to the children. And one of the excuses they tried to use was Minecraft on the Switch. So essentially, they were worried that Nintendo would be harmful to the children, worse than, say, the PSN users.
No,
Which really? Nintendo? Nintendo is your worry about corrupting all the little children's?
Yeah, Nintendo. Of all people.
Nintendo.
Yeah, because Nintendo's known for their toxic chats. For sure. For sure. We always talk about Nintendo being toxic on first-person shooters and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. Anyways, now... Brian's going to give us a little update on a fiasco, but I want to give a bit of a recap that happened a while back. Now, Andrei Sapkowski and CD Projekt Red have kind of been feuding for a while, and this is in regards to the Witcher franchise. Now, if you're unfamiliar with who Andrei Sapkowski is, he's the fellow who had written the Witcher book series. Now, originally when he struck a deal with CD Projekt Red, he just kind of asked for a lump sum of money instead of receiving, a percentage of the profits, and because he thought The Witcher wouldn't do too well. 3 games later and a bunch of DLC later, The Witcher is a huge video game franchise. Loads of people love it, and Andrei Sapkowski has been real upset about it because of the fact that the video games seem to have overshadowed his book series. In fact, people will go to his meetings and his Q&A sessions and basically ask him things about the video games and not the books and everything. And some people even assumed that the books were based off the games when it was vice versa. So Mr. Sapkowski decided, you know what, I'm going to demand more money. I'm going to try and form a lawsuit against CD Projekt Red. And for a while, we haven't really heard too much about it. But Brian, go ahead and give us the update on what's going on in that whole fiasco.
Okay, so it seemed odd when Sapkowski said he was demanding money, basically, because in the U.S. that's not how it works, is, you sign a contract, you get the money, you don't get to look up and say, hey, I want more money, and, get more money. That's actually not the case in Poland. There is there's a part of Polish copyright law that says essentially, if the creator licenses something, and it's determined that he made less money or they made less money than they should have, they can ask or sue for more profit. We don't know exactly how this has gone down. We know that CD Projekt Red and Andrei Sapkowski have now settled. They have given Sapkowski a sum of money. We don't know how much, but we do know it is lower than the $16 million he was asking for. And they said they've left on good terms, that they've parted on good terms, which is great in case there's another Witcher game in the future. Mm-hmm. A lot of people are trying to take this as evidence that, CD Projekt Red is trying to placate him so they can make another Witcher game, which we have no evidence that they even want to make another Witcher game, but that's besides the point.
Yeah.
And honestly, I want to talk about this mainly as we talked about this months ago when it first started, and we said we'd update people when we had more news, and then there was really no more news for months because they were in, litigation. So I just wanted, have this little update. It seems to be over now. Hopefully this won't flare up again in the future if Sapkowski wants even more money.
Honestly, I don't think Sapkowski would be able to do that again, just because of the fact they made a settlement. He has gotten more money from it. Mm-hmm. And quite honestly, I don't really see another Witcher game in the works. I mean, they recently did Gwent, the Witcher card game series. I'm not really too sure how that's going. I mean, it could be doing well. But it seems to me that right now CD Projekt Red is more focused on the Cyberpunk series as opposed to The Witcher, because Cyberpunk looks exciting, and they're really trying their best to make it as open world and as multiple choice as possible. And the development team for Cyberpunk 2077 is at least 4 times larger than that of the Witcher development team. So, I mean, maybe there'll be a Witcher game in the future, and if so, maybe they'll have an even bigger development team because of Cyberpunk, but at the moment, I just don't see that happening in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really see it. Anyways, I'll take away this next little topic. Now, if you have been on the internet for a brief period of time, you would be familiar with the Ultra Instinct Shaggy meme. Now this person who took a clip from a Scooby-Doo movie where Shaggy, under hypnosis, just goes into full awesome mode, just beats up all these biker dudes out of nowhere after a trigger word, and it's all epic. And this guy took this scene and over-edited it to where it looked like Shaggy was entering Ultra Instinct mode that Goku used in Dragon Ball Super. And because of this, more than 300,000 people have signed a petition to get Ed Boon to let Shaggy in as a playable character in Mortal Kombat 11. That is right, folks. People are trying to get Shaggy into Mortal Kombat. And Ed Boon has teased people on this. He leaked an image of Shaggy fighting Scorpion in Mortal Kombat 11. He didn't say it was official gameplay footage, but he tossed it out there. He also tossed out an image of Scooby-Doo being a playable character in Injustice 2, so you can kind of assume this is all a joke to him. But the fact that this is happening, I kind of thought about it, in the past, we've had some pretty weird characters in fighting games, some really weird cameos in fighting games. As is nature for video games, we have lots of serious characters come in, and that's cool and all, but then there's always the peculiar ones. And I have a list here for 8 weird characters in fighting video games. Now, I'm going to start off with number 8, because given a list, I always like to climb all the way up to the top, because that's usually how lists go. You start off at the very bottom, and you go all the way up to the top. Now, we also want to hear your opinion. If you thought of any character cameos in a fighting game that you thought was really bizarre, let us know. Comment in the videos and whatnot. Starting off, though, at number 8, we have Donkey Kong for the Wii version of Punch-Out! Now, Mike Tyson's Punch-Out! Is a difficult, but it's a pretty fun boxing game for the NES. It is basically where Little Mac came from in Smash Bros. And it's a boxing game. You fight characters and you have a series of combinations. Now, that was for the NES, then there was a Super Nintendo version called Super Punch-Out!, but it just wasn't really as difficult as the original. And the Wii decided to create a remaster of the NES version of Punch-Out! And in the Wii version of Punch-Out!, there is an exclusive character that you don't get to play as, but you get to fight. And that, my friends, is Donkey Kong. You actually get a box against a full-grown gorilla in Punch-Out! If you were to punch Donkey Kong, bananas would just go flying out of his head and everything. And if you were to lose to Donkey Kong, he would pick you up over his shoulder and carry you away Pauline style. I love it. You get a box, a giant gorilla.
That's fun, and that's a very Nintendo move.
It is a very Nintendo move. And fun fact for anybody who's never played the Punch-Out! Series, it's not the first Nintendo character to get a cameo in the Punch-Out! Franchise, as Mario is a referee in the original NES versions of Punch-Out! So I thought it was interesting. Now, on to number 7. Now, this was a recommendation from Brian, and a lot of people have also heard about this if they ever researched weird video game cameos. Now, Fighters Mega Mix was, in a way, Sega's attempt at a fighting game made exclusively out of Sega characters. Now, some characters were from Virtua Fighter, Fighting Vipers, which also has a character on this list. And there were even some characters from the Sonic franchise that made an appearance in this game. But the most interesting and the most peculiar character included was Hornet, the Daytona car from Daytona, USA. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. You could fight or play as a car in a fighting game.
He stood upright. You could punch with the tires. It was...
He had a move where, like, he would peel out one of his tires on a person's face and then knock him back. It's interesting. It's the first time I ever heard of a car being a fighting character that wasn't like a transformer or something like that. It's odd. It's really odd. Now, on to number 7. Now, the Tekken franchise has had its strange inclusion of guest characters in the past. One of the most famous guest characters that people always thought were peculiar was Gon, the farting Tyrannosaurus Rex with boxing gloves. Yes, that was actually a character in Tekken 3, and its gas blast was fairly lethal when playing as him. However, the Tekken game that got the most attention in regards to its weird characters was Tekken 7, because Akuma was featured as a playable character in Tekken 7, but that was also explained due to events in Street Fighter Cross Tekken, which we'll also get to later. But the other inclusion that people thought was odd was Noctis from Final Fantasy 15. I mean, he has some fighting skills with him and everything, but it's just odd to see a Final Fantasy character in a Tekken game, given the fact that there is a fighting game exclusively for Final Fantasy characters. But that was not the weirdest character to be announced for Tekken 7. In like a presentation where they talked a bit, we showed a little bit of the gameplay footage and everything, it was announced that Negan, one of the main antagonists from AMC's The Walking Dead, would be featured as a playable character in Tekken 7. And that one confuses me the most, and it's confused a lot of people as well. People are excited, but also skeptical because Negan's just a guy with a baseball bat.
Yeah.
That is all he is. He's a big, burly, tough guy with a barbed wired baseball bat. And that is it. I genuinely don't know. I mean, I don't know what his moveset would be.
I haven't seen any footage of him in action, but Negan was popular at the time this game came out, and when this was announced, it was during that time where there was the season finale with you didn't know who Negan was gonna kill and this and that and
yeah, but I mean, it's odd. I mean, I'd definitely like to hear if anybody's gotten to see any gameplay footage of Negan or anything. I'd like to hear your opinions on him and whatnot. But moving on to number 5, and this was a recommendation from Brian, and this is also a well-known strange cameo in fighting games in general. Now, Fighting Vipers was a game similar to Virtua Fighter, but it was a little different. It focused more on armor mechanics and in enclosed spaces, caged rings and things like that. Now, there were some strange characters included in that game, but the strangest one of all was Pepsi Man!
Pepsi Man!
Pepsi Man! The character in a bodysuit resembling the Pepsi logo, who could only speak in hissing, and was really only well known for his own game, Pepsi Man, as well as a couple of commercials for Pepsi Man.
Yep. Pepsi Man.
Pepsi Man, dude.
Yep.
Pepsi Man.
Mm-hmm.
Pepsi Man was a playable character.
Yep.
It's a thing. And if you see any gameplay footage for it, you would be just as speechless as we are in the situation, because it's Pepsi Man. There's not much else that you could really say about it. You just beat up people and just Pepsi Man, and that's it. This next one. Now, this one I thought was pretty hilarious, okay? Now, Xenophage Alien Bloodsport was a game that's very similar to the style of Mortal Kombat. Its premise was that aliens from different planets would all come together into a tournament and fight each other to the death. And it was known for 2 things. One, the fact that its fatalities were referred to as meat, as the announcer would shout after the opponent got killed in their fatality, or their meat, basically. And also the inclusion of Barney the Dinosaur as a playable character in this game.
Now, I honestly had not heard of this before I saw it on this list, so I'm going to need you to explain this to me.
Now, rumor has it that the developer of this game just had a personal grudge against Barney the dinosaur, as Barney was the bane of most parents' existences back in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he had a children's show that was all about loving and caring and stuff, and parents only remembered it for the migraine-inducing songs that would be included in his shows and whatnot. And Barney the dinosaur just eventually became a character in this game. You know, he would normal dinosaur moves, spin the tail. I believe he was able to like launch hearts at enemies and stuff like that. All in all, not many people really know why Barney was included in this game. The main rumor is that the developer just had a huge grudge against Barney the dinosaur and wanted to include him into a Mortal Kombat style game just so people could beat up Barney the dinosaur.
I'm just amazed whoever owns Barney the Dinosaur agreed to the license for this. I mean...
I'm amazed as well. Of all the things for Barney to be included in, I did not expect a Mortal Kombat style game.
I love you, you love me, let's commit fatality.
I like that. That's good. Now, the next one. Now, at this point, the Super Smash Bros. Franchise it's not uncommon for a character to be introduced who's not necessarily affiliated with Nintendo by itself.
That seems like 10% of the roster in Ultimate at this point.
Yeah, I mean, we have Pac-Man, we have Ryu from Street Fighter, we have Cloud Strife from Final Fantasy,
Sonic, Joker from Persona 5.
Yeah, there's a good number. Now, while it's expected nowadays, back when Super Smash Bros. Brawl, the third installment of the franchise, came out, this was a pretty big deal. Mainly because there were only 2 characters that were not directly affiliated with Nintendo that got introduced. A lot of people know Smash Bros. Brawl as the first game to include Sonic the Hedgehog as a playable character. And that was a main selling point for that game. A lot of people got it just to play as Sonic. But the other character that got introduced, to everybody's surprise, was Solid Snake from the Metal Gear Solid franchise. Now, there's not really too much to say. I mean, his fighting style is basically the same you would expect in Metal Gear Solid. He used a lot of gadgets.
You could scan people, and Otacon would give you a brief, synopsis of what that fighter could do.
Yeah, which was hilarious. I always enjoyed listening to those ones. He also was able to hide in his cardboard box, which is iconic in the Metal Gear franchise.
Yep.
And that's just about really all we could say. I had to bring it up because it was the first inclusion to the Smash Bros. Franchise that really had people scratching their heads. I know that in Smash Bros. For 3DS and Wii U, that's when we got some introductions of some interesting characters. I believe we had Shulk from the Xenoblade series. We have Bayonetta got introduced. Ryu from Street Fighter got introduced. A lot of peculiar ones. But Snake was really the first to really make people go, why? So he deserved a spot on the list.
The Duck Hunt Dog.
The Duck Hunt Dog, yes.
I hate that thing.
Now, number 2 on our list. Now, if you know Arnold Schwarzenegger, you know that he was a huge fan of WWE. In fact, back in the day, he somehow even managed to end up in the WWE Hall of Fame. Now, I myself, I'm not necessarily sure why he was in the Hall of Fame, but I know that he is. So, it's not really unexpected to hear that Arnold Schwarzenegger would be a DLC character in a WWE game. But it surprised everybody to find out that he was included in 2K16, but not as himself, as his interpretation of the Terminator.
I remember when this was first announced and people were trying to figure out what the heck was going on.
Yeah, and it wasn't a gimmick. You were supposed to assume that it was the actual I want to say it's the T-800.
Yeah, T-800 is Schwarzenegger's.
Yeah, the T-800 unit just going into the ring and just fighting wrestlers. It's ridiculous but awesome at the same time to be able to just play as Arnold Schwarzenegger as the Terminator in a wrestling game. I did not expect him to come from the future to deal like suplexes on like Hulk Hogan or anything like that. It's just such a great inclusion to the game, the list. I had to do it. Now, number one. This is the one that confused so many people. So many people. This made no sense. This made no sense at all. No one understood why this was a thing. If you're a fan of the Mega Man franchise, you may or may not have known about the original box art for the first Mega Man game and its infamy. Now, instead of depicting the little blue Reploid that we're so familiar with, the first Mega Man game's box art depicted Rockman, the original name for Mega Man, as a fully grown, out-of-shape man. And he donned a blue and yellow striped jumpsuit. This guy looked nothing at all like Mega Man. Nothing at all like Mega Man. In fact, instead of having the arm blaster that Mega Man is known for, he is drawn holding a laser gun in his hand. They didn't even add the arm cannon. This guy was so far apart from Mega Man that this was like an inside joke, a meme. A lot of people would joke about bad box art Mega Man. So it blew everybody out of the water when it was announced that bad box art Mega Man would be a playable character in the game Street Fighter Cross Tekken. This made no sense. This made no sense whatsoever. Nobody understood why bad box art Mega Man was a playable character. In fact, a lot of people who played the game didn't even know who he was at first. They had to do research on this.
Yeah.
I mean, now, he's not the... There were some other characters that got introduced that no one really understood. Now, for example, bad box art Mega Man was one of the PlayStation exclusives. One of the other ones that got introduced was Cole McGrath from the Infamous franchise. Nobody saw it coming. He was just a PlayStation exclusive. You could also play as Pac-Man in a mech suit, which also blew people out of the water. It made no sense. Thank God Smash Bros. Just kept Pac-Man at Pac-Man.
Yeah, it's all you need.
It's all you need. But bad box art Mega Man. I mean, they probably had the option to include Mega Man, or maybe they didn't have the option to include Mega Man. And because of this, they decided to just resort to the bad box art one, because it's technically not the canon Mega Man. Who knows?
I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know. It makes no sense.
It makes no sense.
It makes no sense at all. But that was our top 8 list for the strangest character cameos in a fighting video game. What were your thoughts? Were there any other characters out there in a fighting game that you saw and your reaction was, what the what? Why is this character here? Where'd they come from? What are they doing here? Things like that. Be sure to let us know. We would love to hear your opinion on that. Now, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of this week's episode of the Phone Booth. As always, my name is Ed Heitman, and joining me in the studio today is my good friend and co-host, Brian Rodriguez.
Goodbye.
Now, our show is all about pop culture, and we'd love to hear from you folks. Is there any topics that you'd want us to talk about? Any trailers you want us to talk about? Any news recaps to go over? Any lists to make? Let us know. Comment on the video, comment on our page, The Phone Booth, or comment here on the Voice of Stockton's Facebook page. If you know us personally, go ahead and message us personally. We'd love to hear from you folks. And with that being said, have a wonderful, wonderful afternoon.